then for you, Jim, from there was that first big break that helped you get to where you are now?
Well, I was being a professional musician in Dallas. I had jumped around a little bit. I lived in Kansas City for about 2 years, and I said, you know what? I've really got to go where I know I need to be, which is Nashville. For me, it was funny. A very influential meeting for me was the day that I met Larry London, which is also the day that I met Dom Famularo. And, Larry was a phenomenal player, had played with Elvis, had played with Steve Perry, Journey's Raised on Radio. He had played with Adrian Belew. He had, and by the way, about half of the country records that have been made in the last 20 years at that point. He was the guy in Nashville. And meeting him really kind of cemented this idea that I needed to move to Nashville because that's where the music that I was hearing, and you have to understand the timing too. When in the early 90s, like I love all that early 90s grunge stuff as a listener, but as a musician, it's really easy to kind of listen and go, there's maybe one great musician in that band, and then there's some good musicians. And I was listening to the music coming out of Nashville, and the musicianship was so high that I was like, wow, I mean, I got to go there. I want to be a part of that. So I moved to Nashville in 1997 with really not a great plan. I didn't have any money saved up. I didn't have a really great lead on where I was going to live. I got a job at a drum shop. I somehow got them to let me stay at the drum shop. Kind of like Billy Bob Thornton and Sling Blade. I mean, it was just sort of, they were like locking me in the shop at night.
Right.
And then I was going out and networking and meeting people and playing gigs. And when the drum shop closed, I was still networking and meeting people and doing gigs, only I didn't have a place to live, so I was living in the back of my truck for a couple weeks.
Wow.
And then Rich Redmond actually called me and said, hey, I'm going out of town for like 2 weeks. Can you watch my cat? And I was like, give me the keys to your apartment, I'll watch your cat.
Right.
So he gave me the keys to his apartment. I basically moved in, and we lived together for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was working at Pearl on the loading dock.
Wow.
Just unloading boxes. I mean, they could have been boxes of furniture, but for me, the fact that they had snare drums and hi-hat stands and all that kind of stuff made it a little bit better.
Wow.
So the first year I was in town, I was just gigging and working at Pearl, and just trying to meet people and make some sort of break. And the thing that happened for me, it was just real innocuous. I had played a gig with a bass player, 6 to 10, paid $40 at one of the local gigs, and he called me up one day. He said, hey, I got a gig for you. And I was thinking, well, where and when? He's like, no, this is an artist gig. I've got a gig with a guy named Mark Chestnut. And I was like, oh wow! I mean, this guy in the late '90s was a really big artist.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, what do I got to do? I was just like, he says, you don't have to do anything. They're going to come see you play. Just let me know when you're going to be playing somewhere you want them to come see you. So they came and saw me play. They hired me, gave me the board tapes. They were tapes, and some charts. And they said, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And my first gig with those guys was playing on the very first season of The View up in New York City. So it was Barbara Walters' first season of that show.
Wow.
And so my first gig with those guys was on live TV.
Amazing.
And I did that gig for 2 years.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, this is really powerful too, I think, Jim, of that deep passion and commitment for you with moving to Nashville, gigging, doing what it took, and real challenges that you had. I mean, living in your car, that's not easy, basically kind of being homeless. And then, but persevering, networking is also what I'm really hearing was really huge, really important.
Yeah, I had 5 gigs. The other 2 nights I was going out and meeting people. I remember walking into a club in Nashville, and it was filled with musicians. It was really, I mean, it was, to use a word, it was a really happening place at the time, you know. And I didn't know anybody in there, but I could tell that everybody there knew each other. And I said, you know, in a month, I want to know everybody in this place. And so I did that, you know, and I met a lot of really interesting musicians that I worked with for several years after that, just even in that one club.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing. I was just networking as much as I can. But, you know, they say great reputations take a long time to build. It's the terrible ones that spread like wildfire. So for me, it was every conversation I would have, every jam session I got in, or every opportunity I got in to go up on stage was just another chance to make a positive impression. I just wanted to connect all those positive impressions into a reputation.